I have Amit Chhabra, head of health and travel insurance policy bazaar.com. Hi Amit, good evening. Welcome to the show. We are talking about health insurance for senior citizens. So first up, how difficult or easy it is for anyone who's above 60 to get a health insurance plan for them.
So there's a difference between what a very common belief is and what the reality is. Commonly, people do believe that getting health insurance for senior citizens is very difficult. It's very expensive, and it's almost next to impossible to get it for a senior citizen or somebody who has a pre-existing disease. But the reality is actually, very opposite. You can get a health insurance policy. It's quite easy. Processes are simple. You can get expensive and cheap plans depending upon the kind of features you want. So it's fairly easy, is what I want to, convey as such. But yes, again, and it's a very important point here to mention that while it's easy to get a policy now, one should not if you're young, you should not think that I'll buy it when I'm elderly. So if you're young, you should buy it now. But if you're already elderly, you're looking to buy for your parents, then you must look to you can get a policy easily.
Factors that one needs to keep in mind, and when you're talking about you're getting it easily, we are talking about an age group that's 60 and above that. A lot of people have a medical history by that time. So how easy would it be if you have a medical history to get a plan for yourself, individual health plan?
Sure. See, what used to happen earlier, and when I say earlier, let's say about 7 years back, that there were only the same kind of plans that were available to the young, to the elderly, to somebody who has a disease. There it was a bit difficult because those plans were designed typically for the young, healthy people, and the moment somebody came in with a illness or with a fairly senior age, the underwriting guidelines of those plans didn't allow you to buy it itself. So, like, I'll give you a simple example. Earlier, most people above the age of 65 years were not eligible for any plan, or one of the, like, for most of the plans that were there. Similarly, if let's say somebody had a history of diabetes or hypertension or a liver or a kidney problem, for them getting a health insurance policy was next to impossible. All of that has now changed. So now, even if somebody is 99 years of age, you can get a health insurance plan for yourself. You can get a plan which goes up to even 1 crore sum insured, even at 99 years of age. Similarly, if let's say somebody has diabetes and no chronic diabetes, let's say somebody is on insulin and has a history of long-standing diabetes, you can also get a health insurance policy for yourself. Now, the next question that might come is the process too difficult? Like, does somebody have to go through like an intense medical checkup or something? Again, there the answer is historically yes, it was a fairly intensive process, but now it's no longer the case. So you can actually get a policy for a 90-year-old diabetic patient from the comfort of your home, just purely by either talking to a doctor who will understand your health and ask you a set of questions, or you can even submit one of your recent health reports, which, for example, if you're a diabetic patient, then you would know your HbA1c level, or your blood sugar level. Or let's say if you're a hypertensive patient, if you have a recent blood report or a recent BP report, that is all that is needed, and one can get a health insurance policy for themselves. So it's fairly simple now for senior citizens to get a policy.
So with all these medical issues or medical history, what are the premium that we are talking about?
Sure, that's a very pertinent question, specifically for elderly, because again, the common belief is that policies do become very expensive at a certain age. See, that is true to a certain extent, because if let's say a policy that, let's say, if somebody who's 30-year-old is buying, that policy typically would not have any limitations. So there would be, and I'll explain what limitations mean. So there would be no room rent capping, which means that one can go to any room in any hospital of the country. So you can take up a deluxe room, a suite room in, let's say, the top hospital of the country, and that is covered. There is no co-payment, which means that the entire bill will be settled by the insurance company, and the customer will not have to pay anything. These are the two most common examples of limitations. Now, if let's say, so this is something I was explaining, a youngster will typically buy. Now, if let's say somebody who's 70, 80-year old, if they are planning to buy a health insurance policy for themselves, so they have the option to buy a very comprehensive policy which has no limitations, so no room rent capping, and 100% of the bill will be paid by the insurance company. But this will be expensive. But at the same time, there will also be an option to buy a policy which limits your benefits to a certain extent. And I'll explain what limits mean. So, for example, instead of going to any room, you can go to a single private AC room, and there is no problem in that, and which is also a fairly good room in any hospital. Uh, so let's say if you are 80 years of age, then maybe 20% of your bill will have to be paid by you. Rest will be paid by the insurance company. So 80% will be paid by the insurance company, 20% by the customer. All of this reduces the premium to half of what it would have normally been. So the what I'm trying to say is customer has the option today to buy an expensive policy which is rich in features and there are no limitations. You can also buy a cheaper policy, much cheaper, let's say half the price. But at the same time, there will be some limitations out there. But what this also means is that this becomes fairly affordable. That's point one. The other point that I'll also mention around affordability is that the regulator actually has been very, very pro health insurance. So what they've also suggested every health insurance company is to provide the monthly mode of payment when a customer is buying a health insurance policy. What this means is that the customer, instead of, so let's say, I'll take my parents' policy as example. The premium is 80,000 rupees because they take the comprehensive policy which has no limitations. Now, this policy is worth 80,000 rupees. I have an option to actually pay in EMIs every month. So I end up paying about 6,000-7,000 rupees instead of paying up 80,000 upfront, which is a large amount. So that also helps significantly in affording a slightly expensive policy. So the ideal option I would suggest for any senior citizen who's watching is to go for a comprehensive policy without limitations and use a flexible mode of payment so that you can afford an expensive policy which is good, rich in features and has no limitations.
Now, how important it is to have an individual health plan when you're talking about policy for senior citizen and not get yourself covered in a group insurance policy?
Actually, an extremely important question. See, what a lot of people do think is that, let's say I am already employed in an organization, my employer provides me coverage, my employer provides coverage to my parents as well. Now, in that case, it's very easy for me to think that, there is already this policy and maybe I can buy a policy for my parents at a later stage. There are a few problems with this logic. Problem one is mostly the sum insured in these policies are very limited. So typically the coverage amount is 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, maximum 5 lakhs. 5 lakhs. The problem is, and you've all seen it during the COVID times that 5 lakhs, sum insured exhausts very, very fast. Even for a simple COVID hospitalization, which say lasted for 7-8 days, the 5 lakhs sum insured was exhausted completely. Now, at a senior age, the chances of complexities being there, let's say it's a heart problem or a liver problem, or as parents age, there are problems that come up. So you would not want to compromise on the kind of treatment you give your parents for saving a bit of money. So that's part one, that the coverage under your group or the employer provided health insurance policy is fairly limited. That's the first problem with this logic. The second problem is you are employed with a company right now. You may not at let's say in the future you may start your own business. You may start working with another company where there is no parents insurance policy. The company may at any stage decide to withdraw the policy for parents as well. It's completely up to the discretion of the organization. All these reasons mean that if, let's say, you are depending on a corporate policy right now, and one of these things change, then you may at a later stage when your parents may need the policy for coverage, you may not have coverage at all, and that's where there is a big liability right in front of you, because at some stage, unfortunately, we will need medical support, and then at that time you'll have to spend money from your own pocket. That's one part of the group coverage. The second part is depending on a bank cover. So typically with a lot of banks, when you open an account, they offer you health insurance policy free of cost.
Right.
They have exactly the same problems which I just explained in the employer cover. Typically the
Got it.
amount is fairly small, 1 lakh, 2 lakh,
Which
5
is
lakh.
why it's important that one should stress on having individual health policies to get a comprehensive coverage to your parents. So that will be all, Amit. Thank you so much for being on the show and helping guide our viewers buy a health insurance policy if they have elderly parents.